Hello, everybody. You're back with us on the podcast, Surviving Boredom, with Will and Topher. I'm Will.
I'm Topher.
For this episode, we thought we'd do something completely unprecedented, which is watch a film and then
talk about it.
Talk about it afterwards. So hold on to the seat of your pants.
This is one of the things that we do to survive boredom, and that is choose a god-awful movie and then torture ourselves with it. Yeah?
Yes. The film that we've chosen today is 1987's R.O.T.O.R. That's an acronym. It stands for Remote Operations Tactical Officer Research.
Remote Officer Tactical Operations Research.
Yes, of course, yeah. I was just testing you there.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely don't get that wrong every single time I try to remember it. It's a sci-fi, I guess you could say it's a sci-fi film.
It's sci-fi in the fact that there's a robot.
There are robots.
There's one robot. There's two robots.
And it's kind of like a cult film, I guess you could say. We encountered it through the Red Letter Media guys. But it's a staple of shows, all those kinds of shows. Angry Video Game Nerd. It's a kind of a notoriously bad film. We've got some vital statistics here. It's directed by a man called Cullen Blaine, which, as far as we can tell, Cullen Blaine, or Cullen Blaine Hoteleg, to give him his full name.
I just like Blaine.
I think Cullen Blaine is definitely a cooler name than Cullen.
Do you know what's
Hoteleg.
a cooler name? Blaine Cullen.
Blaine Cullen.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to write a whole book about a vampire called Blaine Cullen.
Blaine Cullen, yeah. He should have just swapped some stuff around.
Yeah. He also wrote the screenplay with somebody with an equally cool name, Bud Lewis.
Bud with two Ds Lewis, whose only other credit seems to be a cartoon series, right? From 1990, like Dragon
that.
Fighter.
The best thing about R.O.T.O.R, or one of the best things that we found online, is that it has a 2.5 IMDb rating. 2.5 out of 10.
That's
pretty bad. That's pretty bad. A 35% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And I checked, they don't even have a critics review. They don't have a Rotten Tomatoes. Not one critic.
Critical review. No one watched this film. Somehow it got made.
So, shall we watch the film?
Yeah. Go ahead and watch R.O.T.O.R. And we're back after having witnessed. I don't think you watch it, really. I think it's something that you
suffer. You suffer through an hour and a half of a Robocop awful imitation. It's
like the closest thing I can think of off the top of my head is like, what if Robocop was set in the world of Walker, Texas Ranger? This film is very Texas, and they want you to know it's Texas.
Oh boy, do they want you to know it's Texas.
This is a very Texan film. It's hard to know what to process, like where to begin, really.
Well, let's begin at the beginning.
Yes.
So, go over the acronym again. R.O.T.O.R stands for Robotic Officer Tactical Operations Research.
Yes.
I
mean, we'll get into it, but it's
the name of the
very
department.
ambiguous. It's the name of the department, but also sometimes the name of the robot. The robots have separate names in and of themselves. Why would you call it R.O.T.O.R if the R stands for... Unless it's a different acronym that just happens to... Like the R in R.O.T.O.R maybe stands for robot in one case and research in another. So we start with a title crawl.
Yeah.
And talk about starting as you mean to go on. The very first line in this film is robbery, rape, murder and arson. Just by itself.
Yeah, today's news, robbery, rape, murder, arson.
Yes.
Tomorrow's solution... R.O.T.O.R.
Yes.
Yeah, it's quite a hell of a way to start a movie, isn't it?
But of course, there isn't actually really any addressing of robbery, rape, murder, and arson.
No, not at all.
It's kind of more
It's just one man. It's one man living his life, and we are watching some kind of video log of that. Dispersed with very, very hard 80s beats.
very crunchy synths.
And a lot of driving.
This film begins again with like a very long, interminable conversation about spending a weekend at the lake.
Yeah, a couple in their car. They're not very happy about going on holiday. They can't really be bothered.
They're just kind of bickering and arguing, driving around, and then suddenly something happens.
Something happens! Oh dear!
They encounter...
what looks like a murder.
What looks like a murder.
What looks like one man kneeling over the victim. He's covered in blood. She's covered in blood.
It's like an old hobo with a shotgun. Barely 3 minutes into the runtime, and we're already horribly confused about what's going on. Horribly confused.
They call the police, and the police arrest the man who was covered in blood, and we think that's the murderer, that this is what's happened. But then he goes to the interrogation room, and the voiceover says that he is one of the world's leading robotic scientists or something like that, and he has his own department within the police force called R.O.T.O.R. That's his department.
It's kind of confusing. Like the main character, Eric Cold Iron, who sets a fantastic tradition in this film of just wacky, amazing names. You know, you've got to hand it to them.
Names.
They've got cool names. He's kind of he's like a beat cop, like a really grizzled, like noir beat cop detective.
Yeah.
But for some reason, he's the head 80s. Of a lab.
Yeah, but he's a scientist, exactly.
He's a scientist. He's not.
He walks around with a gun in his pocket, and he's a scientist. Everyone else in his lab is wearing the white coats, and he's walking around in this beige leather get up with some, the blue jeans, the Texas blue jeans thingies or whatever. But he calls himself a modern day Dr. Frankenstein. Or apparently he says that's what other people call him. Very much like Neil Breen.
And then it sort of cuts to flashback to last Thursday.
Yes. He said my life was very different last Thursday.
This utterly bewildering scene. We start to realise it's actually opened in media res. And
we're flashing back to the beginning of the story now. And it pans onto his face, everything's nice and silent, and then all of a sudden you get punched in the face with the 80s music.
Actually, for a film where actually comparatively very little happens, the music does a fantastic job of giving everything a sense of urgency.
Just like Two Steps from Hell. You listen to those guys and suddenly everything you do, brushing your teeth, reading a book, hoovering, it becomes a monumental epic task that you must overcome.
So the music in this film is very much load-bearing. It's holding up a lot of things.
And if
you were to take it out, the whole thing would collapse probably,
If I am correctly informed, that is David Newman. And David Newman is one of my favourite composers because he composed the Ice Age soundtrack, the original first movie Ice Age soundtrack, which has one of the best opening title musics of all time, of all animated history. That's one of the best opening title musics.
Yes.
Anyway, so it wakes on him in the morning. It pans on him in the morning. He wakes up, big banging 80s music, and with the camera's moving across his kitchen, and he has. One of the best things was when they panned across a section of the side, and it got loads of small plastic jars on it, small plastic bottles on it, as if he was taking lots of medicine and things like that. But it actually turned out it was just
he's got a mean riboflavin addiction or something.
Gotta take his vitamins.
He's gotta have that vitamin D.
Mm-hmm. A cut to him sort of getting out of bed, but then there's a very strange moment when all we are looking at for 17 full seconds is his Texas coffee mug with this giant cow face.
Yeah, it looks like Desperate Dan style. Cow skull.
That's
type.
Exactly it. That's exactly it.
It kind of sets the tone for the rest of the film, which is lots of long padding shots, transition shots.
Which leads us on to the next shot, which is 40 full seconds of him walking from over there to over here where his horse is. And we're not talking he's doing anything else. He's just walking very slowly.
We should describe it a bit more fully because
Sorry, I'm gesturing,
he comes out, he's out on his front porch. It's a lovely day on the ranch. He's just sitting around enjoying his coffee.
No, he's not enjoying his coffee, is he? He comes outside and stands on the porch, then walks over to his horse who is eating grass.
Over to his horse.
And then, here's the funny part, the funny part. He gives the horse the coffee, and he eats the carrots that he's holding in his hand, and then just sort of and shakes his head as if that's supposed to be some kind of daily joke that he has, that he lives like that with his horse.
He seems very self-satisfied. He's very happy with himself.
What I'm worried about is he the kind of person who would then drink the coffee after he's let the horse have some?
If we're speculating as to his state of mind, we should probably touch on the fact that it sort of shows his whole morning routine before any real instigating action takes place.
We listen to the entire song.
This is he sort of spends a day. He sort of he gets up, he feeds his horse, he sort of rides around the ranch on his horse. He blows up random trees on his property.
Really badly. He doesn't blow it up very well.
And then he decides to shave. It's just that order of events is very funny to me.
And we've listened to the entire song by this point. He calls what is supposed to be his lady,
Penny,
who is clearly on the phone 20 years younger than him, at least. And
everything's younger in Texas.
As soon as he puts the phone down, he gets in the car and another song starts. It's been less than 120 seconds and we're now listening to another song while he drives the entire route, every single yard of his journey from home to work.
Also, when he's communicating with sort of Penny, it also sets another small tradition in this film, which is sort of people spouting nonsensical one-liners as if it's dialogue.
If it's
funny. One of the most bewildering was 2 can live as cheap as 1 if 1 doesn't eat.
Yeah, I mean, what did he mean? Does he not eat or does she not eat? I mean, in the movie, they clearly eat a lot. We'll get to that later, but they eat a lot, apparently.
Kind of reminded me of David Byrne's True Stories.
Yeah.
But, obviously, David Byrne, that's a far better film.
Well, but it's kind of the point-ish. I mean...
this Cold Iron guy, he just speaks exclusively in, hard-boiled one-liners, really.
Yeah, if you could condense every, sort of cool, funny, cliche one-liner that is in every blockbuster action movie and distill it into some kind of dictionary, somebody has clearly taken that dictionary and picked one-liners from it, but completely missed the point as to where they're supposed to go, because none of them make any sense most of the time.
He's sort of he's coming into his day of work at R.O.T.O.R.
At R.O.T.O.R.
With a throwaway line about it separating the boys from the toys, which made me kind of giggle, maybe just because.
Oh. But
in this life, you're either a boy or a toy.
Yeah.
No. He knows this, and so do we.
Yes. But that introduces probably my favourite character, and I would assume most people's favourite character because he's the only one that has any life about him.
Yes, ironically.
And ironically, he is a robot. Okay, so you see him, Willard. You see him, he's a little robot that sort of...
Think of it in the tradition of Lost in Space, Danger.
Will Robinson.
In the tradition of Power Rangers, the I robot from Power Rangers. He's sort of got he's kind of got servo cups for hands and
his face is like an alarm clock.
Yes.
And he's got one of those those vacuum tubes.
Yes, for a neck.
One of those silver vacuum tubes for a neck.
And he's always.
And he's wearing a hat. And he's painted in
the robot has a little police hat, so he's a police robot, which is very cute.
But he's the only one with any kind of... I mean, he's a bit depressed, but he's the only one with any personality, yeah.
He knows what kind of film he's in.
His jokes are the only ones that make any sense.
I just kind of think of him as lampshade bot, because he's always sort of making little observational knowing comments,
Yeah, but the first time we see him is just this random 10-15 second shot where what appears to be a scientist walks up to him, but he's holding a mop. And he's mopping, and then he starts dancing with the mop and sort of jokingly challenges the robot to dance. He just starts moving backwards and forwards and stuff.
To be fair, that guy may not have the firmest grip on reality.
So, I mean, at first, I thought that was R.O.T.O.R. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, the whole movie's going to be about this.
That would be amazing if it was.
Really cool, because we didn't have the disc we just found on YouTube. If we'd had the case, maybe I wouldn't have thought that. That wasn't the case.
That wasn't the case. We didn't have a case.
I just thought that was R.O.T.O.R. and I was thinking, it's going to be like a comedy movie or something with this cool little jibey robot who teams up with Cold Iron and they become this odd couple and blah. That would have been a far better movie.
Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, but with a robot. Instead of Danny Glover. He could have totally played
that. Would have been amazing, actually.
Exactly.
That would have been a much better film. Movie. That wasn't the film we got, unfortunately.
No, it wasn't. At one point, did we mention that Robocop tries to get a human receptionist's number? He rolls up to her and just goes, "Hey, when am I gonna get your 7 numbers, girl?"
Maybe he meant a serial number.
Oh, 7 digits. Sorry.
Maybe it was just a misunderstanding. He just wanted her serial.
Well,
number,
no, I mean he is always making jokes, so yeah, it could have been just like a play.
He just thought she was malfunctioning. He just wanted to send her back to the manufacturer, you know.
Can I get your 7 digits?
Next up, he's giving a presentation,
Yeah.
right, about the R.O.T.O.R technology to like a board, like investors or.
And let me tell you something. They hella put the board in board meeting.
They
do not look. They look like they don't know why they're there. It was like they'd had their souls stripped from their body, looked like by Dementors, and they were just this blank, emotionless face. There was just no reaction at all. It was quite eerie,
Yes,
you know?
yes. So basically, over like a sort of a presentation, Cold Iron is presenting to. I mean, he's employed by the city, I think, to do this project.
We don't know.
They feature the skeleton. They show the skeleton of the 222 robot.
Yeah, as if like this is how far we've got, and we're going to show you what it can do as far as movement is.
And it's just boogieing down.
Oh yeah, a little stop motion animation
it's
there.
It's really cool, yeah.
Really cool Tai Chi moves, And
it kind of reminded me of like the old MTV interstitials, like Liquid Television. I can picture that robot just kind of like boogieing down.
Oh wait, that little robot, the one whose hands spin around and stuff. I like him. No, he's way cuter. This one was just an actual metal, proper looking skeleton. It was quite eerie. And then he did that weird thing where he bent backwards like the Matrix.
It's weird because like without his chassis, as they call it.
Yeah.
He's actually like very flexible.
Yeah.
He never displays this level of like,
no, all he does is point.
Flexibility.
He just points at things.
And there's like very little scientific basis to it really. As far as I could tell, it just boiled down to they found a magic metal alloy and it gave the robot special powers or something.
Well, I'm not sure on that part. All I can remember is Cold Iron telling the board meeting people that he could do loads of different things. He could do Tai Chi and Kung Fu, and he was trained in all these different things. He'd be programmed in all these different skill sets and martial arts and all that kind of stuff.
Good vibration in its molecular tonality is one that I had to write down.
Do that again?
Good vibration. Good vibration to its molecular tonality.
What are they referring to there? What has
the robot chassis
has good vibration?
And then it starts dancing.
Oh. Good
vibrations.
He's got good vibrations.
Good vibrations.
Yeah, okay, that was a good one.
One of the key takeaways from the presentation is that this technology is not mature. It's not ready. It may be up to 25 years. Clearly, like a long time frame. But then we cut immediately to he gets a call from his boss, Commander Bugler.
Bugler, yeah.
Who's apparently been getting a lot of pressure. He's under a lot of pressure from Senator Donald D. Douglas to justify the cost of the master of alliteration, Donald D. Douglas.
Yeah.
To try to justify the expense of the R.O.T.O.R project and product in 60 days.
So his boss gives him 60 days to finish the R.O.T.O.R project, and he then says 4 years at a push. Okay? So this is the time frame we've got. He's given him 60 days, and realistically, the only possible way is in 4 years. Also, like, very bewildering dialogue. The dialogue is so difficult to follow. There's so many unnecessary layers to it. Like, why we don't even need to know about the senator, really. The best part of that entire conversation, his boss said to him, "You can't talk to me like that. You're fired." And then Cold Iron says back to him, "You can't fire me. Do you know who I am? If you fire me, I'll make a noise louder than 2 skeletons making love in a tin coffin."
Yes.
And then he said, "I quit." And he ran off. He stormed off.
It's just utterly bewildering, and it's not helped by Cold Iron's use of like hopelessly mixed metaphors. He takes mixing metaphors to a fine art. He's like a bartender with a drink or something, like a really like fancy drink, like
2 skeletons making love in a tin coffin.
He talks about like how the senator, Bugler and Cold Iron have like a sort of cryptic exchange. They're using the metaphor of the senator finding the Holy Grail, and it's also the Holy Grail to Cold Iron, and then he gives a slice of the Holy Grail to the mayor, and
I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, he says if you're leaving, you've got to give the key to the second scientist, and he's going to be the lead. So he does that on the way out and gives the nerdy scientist the key.
I mean, you could say that Cold Iron's been left out in the cold.
He has been.
He's living up to his name. So he's obviously pretty miffed, so he decides to go out to dinner with his girlfriend, Penny.
Yeah, he calls Penny, who we see for the first time, and ding 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 ding, She is 20 years younger.
Yeah, so they have a long extended feature of him and Penny going to dinner where nothing happens. There's really dramatic music. It feels like something's about to happen.
Yeah, the camera pans past the window and they're talking. You can't hear anything. They're talking. You can't hear anything. It's just all the music. This sort of schleppy love-making 80s duet. It literally is like if that was in any other movie, two people would be on the screen going at each other.
Yes, it sounds like a romance theme. Yeah. It sounds like it should be a sex theme.
But they're just sat there eating
Nothing happens.
Eating dinner.
They have dinner. They go for a walk. It fades out.
Yeah, then they go to the park.
What was the point?
It didn't add anything. I think it was supposed to give him more of a dimension as a character. Like, he's got this extra part to his life. I'm not sure. Like, it can't just be that he felt bad and wanted to feel better, so called her for lunch. I mean, it just added nothing to the story whatsoever. We see her on screen twice, max, and, like, once when she's sleeping in the corner of the screen or something.
Yes.
It's so irrelevant.
She does feel like a very throwaway character.
On the other hand, she's not gratuitous either. She's not there, they don't make love, she's not there, she never takes her clothes off, she's not just there to be a good-looking woman, or... Really, it literally adds nothing.
Doesn't.
If we were to cut that out of the movie, nobody would know.
Basically, whilst they're out to lunch, or whilst Penny's out to lunch with Cold Iron, it cuts back to R.O.T.O.R, where obviously they're trying to... run things in Cold Iron. Yeah, the nerd scientist, the second in command, the schmucky scientist, and the comedy butler.
And he gets like
trying to run the department in his absence.
The lead scientist gets quite frustrated with like how impossible it is and stuff.
Well, that's the weird thing. Despite being like the second in command, he seems to have no idea how anything works. He can't work the computer. He doesn't seem to really know what he's doing.
Yeah, and the robot gets quite anxious and frustrated. He's like, "Oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? We're gonna have to do such and such." And the scientist turns to him and says, "Forget it. This isn't a low-budget sci-fi movie."
Yeah, just really.
He literally, all he was missing was the look and the wink at the camera.
Yes.
Like
very, very on the nose lamp shading.
Oh, it's terrible.
Which of course makes everything okay.
Yeah. So they want to do something manually with. Again, it's all technobabble. You can't keep up with it. Nothing is explained. They're just going to do something manually, as far as I can tell, to try and get something working with. They're
literally pressing. It seems like they're literally pressing buttons at random. They're just like, let's see what this does.
And then we cut to the room that actually
the lab assistant.
Actually says R.O.T.O.R on the door.
Yes.
And inside there is the tube with this R.O.T.O.R robot. You can't see it or anything. It's just this green cryostasis kind of tube thing.
Yes.
And there's a girl science assistant sitting down doing some lab work. And the same science janitor.
It's so.
Native American who calls himself an Indian one.
He looks a bit like Prince in a kind of funhouse mirror.
Do you know who he looks like? He looks like Bruno Mars.
Yes.
He looks just like Bruno Mars.
Okay, so racist Bruno Mars is bragging about how he's got like Native American cheekbones.
What is it he says? Once you go red, you never get out of bed.
Yeah.
What did you just say?
And he self-consciously describes himself as an Indian.
Yeah.
And I'm not too au fait with like Native American
and he's
First
trying
Nation parlance, but I don't think they like being called that at all.
Yes, red.
Red.
That's even worse.
Yes.
Surely that's worse. But essentially, he's a complete arsehole. He's trying to hit on her, and she's not having any of it at all. And he tells her a story about how they used to tie their victims at the limbs. Everything else comes
it's like
from that.
he describes it as like a Native American kind of tradition or something.
Yeah.
Getting pulled into pieces by four horses moving in opposite directions.
But I would like
This is actually important, by the way. We're actually not rambling. This is actually an important plot point.
Kind of, yeah, sort of. But what's also important to remember is that is what he tried to use to pick her up with. That was his way of picking her up, was to completely gross her out and then say ridiculous things when she walked away.
Well, his killer line is, I'm either an Indian or a sissy. Which, talk about walking into it there.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Anyway,
with these cheekbones, I'm either an Indian or a sissy,
So he reaches for his headphones, his Walkman or something, and I'm not sure. They seem to be hung around some kind of aerial. Nothing has been explained. Nothing makes sense. He just reaches for them.
He sort of shocks himself, doesn't he?
Yeah, he reaches for his headphones, he shocks himself, and then he talks consistently to himself for 5 minutes about how rubbish his Walkman is and he's going to have to get his $3.99 back or whatever. Meanwhile, something's happening with the tube behind him, but we still don't see anything with R.O.T.O.R.
Well, don't we see his hand with his arm?
There's
quite a cool shot of the arm like, emerging from the sarcophagus.
Yeah.
It's quite nicely filmed. It's like got sort of like
just sort of
deep red lit
like
kind of background. It's quite stylish and
so
quite
that's
impactful.
The first glimpse we've got of R.O.T.O.R, and we're 30 minutes into the movie.
About 15 minutes of plot have happened in this time, something like that.
Yeah, that's the first time we've had anything to do with the robot itself.
That would be fine. Like half an hour, that would be a perfect time to introduce it if the film kept up the momentum.
Yes.
So now we need to cut back to such classic action movie dialogue as "I'll marinate the meat if you go to the mini-mart."
What the?
It just screams action.
Don't even start with the mini-mart. Okay, he goes to the mini-mart.
It's kind of like an instigation for like the rest of the movie.
He doesn't get anything from the mini-mart. He's sitting in his truck and then he's just looking at some guys.
Well, he's profiling people, isn't he?
He's not a policeman. He's a scientist.
Yeah. Well, he basically runs a grift. Unbeknownst, it's important to note that at this point, completely unbeknownst to Cold Iron, there is a robbery taking place at the mini-mart. But he doesn't know this.
Knows, yeah.
There's like a getaway driver waiting outside in a fast car.
The first guy, he asks for change, threatens to run his plates, and just lets him drive away, just watches him drive away. And then he walks up to the other guy and beats the living snot out of him.
And as far as we can tell, it's for no reason.
Yeah, and then the last guy finally comes out of the gas station with the blonde lady, the worker, as a hostage. Like threatening, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? He said, "Oh, you guys, paper." And he's like, you don't want to know what I got with this newspaper, but you're about to find out. And then again, we're gonna say this so many times, for no apparent reason, the staff member, the blonde lady from the gas station, starts doing kung fu and karate. Do you remember that? Yeah. She was outside doing.
Well, I didn't now, but now that you mentioned it,
she did like that spin kick to that guy. Why did she not do that? How did she get to the point where she had a gun to her head if she can do that? We never see her again. We don't know her name. That was just his trip to the mini-mart that had nothing to do with the robot. He is not a policeman.
Well, he is and he isn't. He's like a cop police, lab scientist police guy.
He's just everything, isn't
he? Likes to abuse his office to shake down, random people for loose change.
Things just happen.
Our hero, ladies and gentlemen.
Things just happen in this movie.
Things just happen.
For no reason, things just happen.
So then we see that's actually when we see the shot of the R.O.T.O.R main robot unit escaping from its sarcophagus.
Yeah, he pushes the lid all the way off this time.
And that's actually quite a cool shot, but it's immediately undermined by an incredibly cheap-looking target overlay on the camera, so it's from the robot's perspective.
Yeah, it looked like they were just walking through a hospital with a camcorder. Very handheld.
Yeah. It's kind of like
strangely stuff.
Your dad's old home videos type.
So they were trying to set him up, couldn't do it. The guy electrocuted himself, and R.O.T.O.R came to life. He wasn't supposed to be ready for at least 4 years. All it took was racist Bruno Mars to electrocute himself, and now he's up.
But basically, as far as we can tell, the only significant gap in his programming, as far as like daily operations, is just avoiding chairs. He cannot avoid chairs. Walk straight.
Well, I think like the problem is with his programming is he's only got one mode: judge and execute. And then he goes to find his motorbike, and whilst doing that, walks directly through about 10 rows of plastic chairs that you get in the school assembly. Just walks straight through them. And the funniest part is the actor's actually having a really tough time of doing it, so it doesn't look like a robot. It just looks like a very angry man walking through.
Yes.
We have to stress this robot doesn't look like a robot. The only time we saw anything robotic was the skeleton.
Yeah, like this is a film that very much has no respect for your intelligence.
No.
They don't omit anything that could possibly, even the most obvious point of comparison will be made in the film. Like Sasbot talking about how this is how Terminator got started and that kind of thing. It's like, we get it, man. We've all seen. I mean, although this does precede Terminator 2.
I don't know. You know that stuff.
1980. I mean, it's before this.
It's 80 something, isn't it?
Anyway, so obviously this is all very exciting. R.O.T.O.R has
finally awakened.
Has finally awakened and been unleashed on an unsuspecting.
45 minutes into the movie.
Again, set in the same tradition, in the rich tradition of this film. That's too much excitement. So we again need to cut back to a very long argument. You know, a couple having a very long, interminable argument whilst driving in their car.
It's not a harsh cut, but it's quite, because he drives off on his motorbike and stuff, and you know there's going to be a cut, but it cuts to the most random thing ever because we've never seen these two before.
Yeah.
You know, that's the
they're
first thing
talking
we're
about
seeing.
like getting married. She wants to work after they get married.
Yeah, and he says it's embarrassing for a man to have his wife work.
Yeah.
And he says to her, elope with me tonight,
and
I'll help you get a job.
Yes.
After the honeymoon. So they get through that, and then he's just like, oh, I'm hungry. Like, they argue about 3 different things. They argue and resolved 3 different things within the space of 3 minutes.
Yes.
You know, and by the end point, he gets, like, super angry and starts driving really fast.
Yes.
Straight past R.O.T.O.R.
The instigating moment.
I mean, he was sitting...
Yeah, I do wonder what he would have done if they hadn't driven past. Like, would he have just, like...
He was just driving around looking for crime.
Looking for crime or something? I don't know. Yeah. But obviously, he's very excited. It's his first day on the job. And he witnesses a speeding violation, a traffic violation.
So the couple stop. They're still arguing, and he pulls over and stops. And R.O.T.O.R. pulls up behind him, and he says, "Don't worry, love. It's just a copper." And he heads over towards R.O.T.O.R. and is just like, "I was just telling my girlfriend, you guys do a really good job." Blah blah.
Well, no. He says, "Clearing the undesirables."
Clearing the undesirables. That's it.
Again, if this was like a clever film, if this was like a Verhoeven, like Robocop or something, that might actually be like a funny, like satirical kind of throwaway line. Yeah. But
it's because you don't know anything about the character, you know? He's just saying these awful things, and it's just... But R.O.T.O.R. says something completely incomprehensible in a very strange robotic voice.
I've got in my notes here, metallic garbling.
Yeah, I don't know what he was saying at all.
That was how I could describe...
We went back and listened to it again, and I still couldn't understand what he was saying. And shot the guy, basically.
He literally just shoots him for a speeding violation.
Yeah, he judged the speeding violation, and he executed the perpetrator. But then, for some strange reason... he decides that the passenger is also abetting the speeding. So he heads to go and kill the girl. Completely innocent, she's done nothing.
Yes.
But he decides she needs to be executed as well.
Yes.
And so she drives away like nuts.
Well, also, what we forgot to mention, a very important plot detail, is before she drives off in a panic, she honks the car horn.
Yeah, she climbs over the car, you know, and accidentally presses
for some reason,
the horn.
Yeah, and he really doesn't like it.
Yeah, it's too loud.
So again, it's like, my one weakness or whatever. Like, I just kind of want to establish like what the programming for this robot, like the parameters of the program for this robot must be, because I mean, we all know like Asimov's like laws of robotics. You know, like a robot cannot harm.
Do those robot rules actually apply though? Do people actually? No,
they're not real.
Exactly. I mean,
what is he been programmed? Why is he reacting with like lethal force to a speeding violation?
Because it's not even like it's an evil scientist who's made a robot or whatever. Why would you even make a police robot with the option just judge and execute based on every crime you see? At one point, Cold Iron says that he walks through a busload of nuns to get to a jaywalker.
Yeah, well, he just
didn't blink an eye.
He just thought they were chairs. You know,
I mean, nuns' chairs.
If any nuns are listening, we won't try and sit on you, we promise. So...
the police, they find the body.
Yes. Detective Sergeant John Mango contacts Cold Iron because they found the fiancé's body.
Yes.
John Mango knows he's in and over his head, and he needs to contact Cold Iron.
What is it Cold Iron says to him?
Sergeant Mango, sit on this.
That's it, sit on this.
So he's telling
I'll be there in a minute.
Yeah, he's telling him to keep stum. But also, the reason I get confused about it is because it all seems to happen like unrealistically fast.
Yeah.
Like it just seems to be like because she's still driving.
All we've seen in the interim is her drive away, him drive to her, reach in the car, and her drive away again.
Yes, even though the fact that the pursuit is presumably still going on and hasn't been resolved.
Yeah.
It's Texas cops work pretty damn fast. I'll say that much. Yeah.
So she goes to the gas station.
I've got a name somewhere. So they don't really give her a name until later on.
Oh, not Fiona. Sonia?
Sonia. That's it, Sonia.
Yeah, Sonia drives to the gas station she's banging on the window for help. She calls Highway Patrol, begs for help.
Well, again, I thought in a better movie, with a movie with some sense of tension or something.
Yeah.
Like the iron rule of like killer robot movies is never talk to a disembodied voice.
Yeah.
Because if you're talking to a disembodied voice, the chances are it's the killer robot. But that's not the case here. She literally just calls for help and says, "I'm going south. You're just expecting to see that shot of the robot hanging up and just being like, okay, I know where you are, I know where you're going now, I'm gonna follow you.
Yeah.
But
again, if this was a better movie with more tension, the highway patrol wouldn't have said something like, "Oh my gosh, that's really really bad. We're gonna send this to the Texas police and get them straight afterward." They would have gone, "That's impossible. A traffic cop couldn't have killed anybody.
Yeah.
It must be somebody impersonating you. Just hang tight there."
It's the way she's immediately believed.
Yeah, exactly. There would have been more tension if nobody believed her and she felt like she was on her own. She literally was just like, I can't stay here. I'm gonna go. Okay, tell us which way you're going. I'm gonna go down this road and I'm gonna go south. See you soon.
Everything is so matter of fact as well in this film.
Yeah.
Like everything plays out almost exactly the way they expect it to. There don't seem to be many surprises or like, oh, you thought this but that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, now that they realise that 222's on the loose and John Mango's made the call to Cold Eye and he's brought back into R.O.T.O.R to try and fix the situation, right?
Yeah.
Because he's sort of brought back into the R.O.T.O.R lab, coming from 1987. Like this is like way before like anyone had any, like most people had much of an idea of how computers work, and it really shows.
Yeah.
Because he's literally just typing questions into the computer, like what is R.O.T.O.R's
how do I end this movie?
How do I end this movie? But from his inquiries, he's able to work out that the prime directive of R.O.T.O.R is to judge and execute.
Yeah.
Or that it's operating on its prime directive.
Which is judge and execute.
Which is to murder every motherfucker.
Which is why, I don't know why it's there. So he rings Willard and has a talk with him and says, like, what did you do? What did you try to do? And Willard's basically, oh no, what's happened? And he said, R.O.T.O.R, it's awake, or whatever. And R.O.T.O.R, Willard immediately, without missing a beat, turns around and goes, okay, well, sir, I'd like to take this time to tender my resignation. I've had a lovely time here. And he just puts the phone down on him. Like, that robot is the life and blood of the movie. He's, like, worth watching it because of him,
Well, I mean, I'd like to put the phone down on the film, too, at that point.
Oh, yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think we kind of... Nothing in this film seems to work as well as you might think from, like, a narrative or storytelling perspective. Willard, like, is just there. He doesn't really do much.
Yeah, it's such a shame because it's a waste of a character.
He's not like, you think he's going to be like the comedy sidekick, but he's not even really that. He's just hanging out at the lab.
But he's still the best thing.
and from this, then Cold Iron then calls his supervisor Bugler again.
Yeah, he has a sarcastic phone call with his boss.
That's when we get the busload of nuns quit. And then we cut back to Sonia, although I don't know if she's been...
Sonia, he calls her Sonia.
I don't know if she's actually been named as Sonia at this point, but she hides in a family restaurant.
Yeah, she just goes in and sits down at a table, like stares at the door. And he's still looking for her. Busts into the restaurant from the back, and there's a chef who has clearly been made to be the most rednecky Texan you can think of. Like, he's got bright red hair with like a red cap on backwards, but he's been given these comical plastic SpongeBob buck teeth.
What did we say? Texas face?
Yeah,
this film is Texas face.
And he's talking like, howdy y'all, like that, and he's got these two clearly plastic fake buck teeth, and it's just like, why would you add that in? It's such a random comedy. You're not doing anything like that in the rest of the movie.
Again, it's like this character is introduced and then immediately dispatched.
Yeah, he melts his face on the grill.
Like, obviously, 222 busts in pursuit, and he's like, oh, you can't be in here. And it's like, it seems like it's supposed to be funny, but it's pretty horrifying. And
then he goes for the girl who's sat at like the bar or whatever, and she literally doesn't move for like 30 seconds while he's walking towards her until he gets to her right at the last minute, and then she decides to jump up and run out.
She evades him easily. Like, he gets caught on the chairs, which is obviously, again...
The chairs are his downfall.
Yeah. I can just say there is one frame when he initially emerges from the diner in pursuit of her. The diner's name is Big Jack's.
Yeah.
But there's a pillar in the way, and it looks like... And you can... Yeah. You get the idea.
Big Cooks.
Yes.
And then randomly, Cold Iron finally turns up. He drags her into the car, the Sonia into the car, and then turns around and starts fighting with R.O.T.O.R.
Basically, Sonia's on the run. R.O.T.O.R's bearing down on her, and there's nothing that they can do to stop him. And in the exchange, Cold Iron tells her to keep moving, and they arrange to meet at King's Fishing Lodge at 4 p.m. Bearing in mind, this is the middle of the night. The scene is currently taking place in. So she basically must be driving like the whole day.
Yeah, he wants her to be bait for a couple of hours while he goes and sorts some things out.
Yeah, Cold Iron knows that he can't deal with this situation by himself.
So Cold Iron, after he gets off the phone to Sonia, then rings Dr. Steele lady who walks into her apartment and is literally the most jacked buff.
Yeah. So she's kind of looks like a greaser. She's built like a brick shit house.
I mean, I like her. I think she's gorgeous. But yeah, she's just random lady. And on the phone, he says, we've never met each other before.
Considering that somehow they built a killer robot together. I mean, I know that they're like maybe working in different departments and things, but you think it would have at least contacted each other before, or what happens next? Well, he sort of has an interchange with the gas station clerk, who's again another like redneck stereotype. I mean, he just looks like his name is Merle, you know.
Yeah.
Again, like the tone of this film is just very hard to process. What was the point?
It was just stuff happening.
And
then immediately a plane comes in over the top and we're like, right, okay, this must be the Dr. Steele lady coming in. So I'm looking for Dr. Steele coming through the terminal when Cold Iron meets her. And then she turns up and you're like, who is this lady? She's like wearing a blue librarian's dress with these librarian's glasses on. But she's got this massive neck.
Yes.
She's so jacked.
She is fucking
jacked. I didn't even realise it was her until he spoke to her. And
that's cool.
Who is this lady?
So
more driving.
We've got more transition shots whilst they work out what to do next. So
when they're driving, she says it's impossible to deactivate R.O.T.O.R or whatever. And he gets out this little silver metal stick and goes, not with this.
Yes.
And she goes, a deactivation key? How the hell do you know what that is? You don't...
Well, it's just nonsensical on so many levels, because presumably if they've both been like intimately involved in this project, like really deeply involved in this project,
don't know that.
They would know what the activation key looks like.
I guess they leave it to you to assume that they have worked that closely, despite the fact they've never met or something. I don't know. I don't know. It's really weird.
Another interesting tidbit that comes from their conversation is that R.O.T.O.R.
Yeah, that comes
he's a
later.
Christian. R.O.T.O.R is a Christian. He's had a christening service.
Yeah, after they book into the hotel, she's in her librarian's dress. He turns away, has a moment of reflection where he goes, "Do you remember what I said at R.O.T.O.R's christening?" What? No, you've never met.
But how would they...
What are you talking about? She hasn't been to his christening. And then he turns back. She's completely stripped and was apparently wearing her entire army cargo vest outfit underneath that librarian's dress. And she's like, let's go get him. And that's it. Then they're on their way to get R.O.T.O.R.
So, more transition driving shots of them driving around looking for R.O.T.O.R. Presumably, whilst this is all going on, Sonya has just been driving non-stop, pursued by a killer robot.
Bawling her eyes out.
You'd think that would be the more interesting part of the film. Like, you'd think that would be the meat of it.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a bunch more science talk as they're talking about some way of, I'll do this thing and drain this part of him and
it's pure technobabble.
Some other microbiological crap.
But the fact is, the reason you know it's technobabble is because it doesn't amount to anything at all.
Yeah.
None of what they talk about seems to be in any way relevant. She finally makes it to Kane's fishing lodge.
Yeah, she makes it to that lake thingy.
The exciting denouement.
She pulls over to the side, runs off down to the lake, and then gets into a boat. She gets into like one of the little boats or something.
Again, it's just like the diner scene again. What is her crime other than riding shotgun in the car?
Exactly.
What has she done? Again, like in a cleverer film, you might have seen how, like, the shortcomings of technology or some kind of fail-safe and it doesn't work, but in this, it's literally just because killer robot.
Yeah.
so she's in dire, Sonya's in dire straits. She's awaiting the arrival of Dr. Steele and Cold Iron to save the day.
And then suddenly R.O.T.O.R.
is suddenly there.
He just is behind her standing there.
She gets in a boat. R.O.T.O.R. is suddenly there.
He pulls his gun out
to shoot her.
And he holds it for like 20 seconds, just like walking towards her. I'm like, you're the best, easiest shot you've had all night, and you're just standing there because movie, and then Dr. Steele shoots him in the back or whatever, and she's able to get away.
Yeah, so then all of this, like, there's a sort of inevitability to it. It just feels like everything's just playing out the way an action film plays out. You've got to have the tense last minute rescue, but the film doesn't really do much to like earn that moment.
No.
And doesn't really use any like filmmakers' tools to make that moment feel exciting.
And when it has a chance to kind of do that kind of thing, one of my favourite scenes, like my favourite shots, is after she manages, Dr. Steele shoots R.O.T.O.R. and Sonya manages to get away. Cold Iron is helping Sonya, pulling her towards the car, and R.O.T.O.R and Dr. Steel are having a kick-ass battle in the background. Like, there's a depth of field.
Again,
so they're blurred. They're literally just missing. You're missing all the action.
Yeah.
They're just fighting in the background.
Again, it's like priorities. Like, Sonya very much feels more like the main character than Cold Iron.
For some random reason.
When Dr. Steel initially shoots the robot, Sonya, like, scrambles out of the boat, and then Dr. Steel just kind of, like, jumps on top of him in the boat, but it's not like an exciting kind of action climax. It's just like awkward wrestling. I mean, I've got it, like, when they're fighting in the boat, all I could think of was that scene in The In-Betweeners where Neil punches a fish.
I have not seen The In-Betweeners.
People, In-Betweeners fans will know what I'm talking about. Like, it's got, like, that kind of comedic feel to it. It's not exciting.
There was a lot of that in the movie, yeah. Like, where it's supposed to be serious, but it was actually quite comedic.
It's just awkward wrestling.
That's what I felt about that shot. He's pulling her towards the car, and they're just fighting in the background, having this almost like... have you seen Night at the Museum? You know when Steve Coogan and Owen Wilson are fighting? And then you zoom out, and it's just like little tiny noises. But then you zoom in, and it's this epic battle.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that was like. We were just completely missing all the action,
Yes.
So Cold Iron tries to go up towards him, doesn't he? And he's like, it's over now. You've completed your mission.
Yes.
I'm your master. You can come here. And then R.O.T.O.R puts the gun down, and he tries to like put the deactivation key towards him, and then he stuffs the gun up the Cold Iron's nostril.
It's kind of like a ba-ba-ba.
Yeah, and he's like,
it's kind of like that.
That's literally the noise the robot makes. And then they realise they can't do it that way. It's Dr. Steel. She tries to buy him some time by, randomly lumping around wrestling with this guy. And Cold Iron gets the rope and the bomb
finally we have the payoff from racist guy setting up the Blood Eagle, the concept of the Blood Eagle.
Yeah.
Because then the way that they destroy it kind of becomes they basically use the Blood Eagle technique on R.O.T.O.R, right? They somehow get like ropes around his arms and legs.
It's been established earlier when they were talking about tracking R.O.T.O.R just previous to arriving at the lake. He was talking about that he used to go on Indian treks or whatever. He refers to it as Indian as well. He used to go on Indian treks like every weekend or something for 10 years.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Cold Iron would know all about that.
So he would know about the Blood Eagle and things.
He would know about the Blood
And that
Eagle.
is also how he blows up his trees, isn't it?
Like, a lot of the choices made in, like, filmmaking choices do a lot to, like, sap drama out of it. Like, for example... Because they'd so clearly set up the point that 222 doesn't like car horns and loud noises, I was kind of waiting for that moment where it proves ineffective for some reason. Like he works out some way of overcoming that, and then they try it and it doesn't work, and they're like, oh shit, what do we do now? But again, there's no sort of like dramatic momentum to anything, no sense of development. It just nothing really seems to pay off. They finally managed to get the ropes and bonds around R.O.T.O.R's arms and legs, and then they basically they Blood Eagle him. They drive, instead of horses they've got cars, they pull him to pieces, and he just explodes.
Yeah, twice.
For no real reason, as far as I can tell.
By this point, Dr. Steele's been killed, hasn't she?
Oh, I completely forgot that she dies.
Yeah, she was trying to distract him, and during doing that, he picked her up like a bear hug, and she dug her fingers into his silicon chest and tore his chest apart, and it was all this green goopy stuff, again with the funny green and blue filters or whatever to make it look more/less gory.
It looks so sickly. It's like, ugh.
And then he bear hugs her to death, like he crushes her. Cold Iron is running towards Sonya in the car. He says his reactor breeders are gonna collapse or something. Get down! And at some last bit of science talk. Get down! That kind of thing. It was just
with no like delivery.
What are you talking about? His what's gonna what again?
It's like you only realise after the fact that that's supposed to be the killer line. You're like, right, because he blew up. Oh, I see.
And that's it. It cuts straight back to him in the interrogation room, standing up saying, well, that's my story. I'm going home. I've got a ranch. I've got a horse. I got a good lady. I'm going home. Screw you.
And then he walks out into the parking lot and gets...
He walks outside.
And gets shot in the back by Columbo.
And he gets shot in the back by some person I don't believe
again,
we've ever
another
seen.
Character who has not
We have
been set
never
up.
seen him before.
I thought it was possible it might be the senator. I was like, oh, is this the... But then it's just no.
Yeah. Maybe they were going to make a second one or something. I don't know. I'm not sure.
And so...
And then it cut to his nephew at uni or something.
Yeah, Brett.
Yeah,
his
and
nephew
he was
Brett. Bugler sends a letter of condolence to Cold Iron's nephew
Brett, who we've never met and who did not know existed.
We don't give a shit
at all.
about. I mean, you think we might want to see like Sonya or see like any of these like characters?
I'm pretty sure Sonya is the one that he put in the road that we thought he murdered at the beginning of the movie.
Right.
Yeah, that was Sonya. I'm hoping she turned out all right. The last note is his nephew saying, I got my uncle's effects last week or whatever, and there was a note saying that he hopes we can learn not to fear the machines, but to fear those who use them. Yes. For harm and things like that.
Guns don't kill people.
People do.
People kill people. But people kill each other much more effectively with killer robots.
That's true, yeah. I mean,
and if you give a killer robot a gun...
If you were to pitch this robot to somebody, R.O.T.O.R, it's stuck on glitch mode. It only knows how to judge and execute. Get this new killer robot. And some evil guy's like, yeah, I want 200 of those. He only kills 2 people in the whole movie.
I mean...
That's it.
The body count is actually fairly low.
That's it.
It's nothing to compare with like Terminator or...
And he doesn't even kill them very fun. He just shoots them.
There's no fun. I mean, there's just no... Everything plays out kind of just with no surprises, no twists, no complications. Everything pretty much works out exactly the way they were hoping it to work out.
Yeah, there's no part in the middle of the movie where they try to do something and it doesn't work.
Oh, no, it doesn't work. Oh, we used the horn. It doesn't work.
Oh, now everybody's really, really down in the dumps and we got to get the team back together, try again, or whatever. Powerful, motivational speech by main character. There's none of that.
It's just...
Constantly things just happening to
I tell you what it is. It's like paint by numbers. It's like filmmaking by numbers or whatever. Like, it's kind of like then this and then that. But there's no sense of like urgency or like excitement to any of it. Yeah. But the ending theme is amazing. Hideaway, yeah. By Randy Moore and Cindy Smith. I mean, the music in this is actually pretty top notch. Like,
it's what keeps up the music and Willard the Robocop, the robot cop.
I think we called it like load bearing music because if you take it out, like everything collapses. Yeah. Like sometimes you're just being propelled along by the sheer sort of like force of like the music. I mean, this feels like this could have been a really good short film. Yeah. Like a 15-minute short film. It feels like they had enough material and...
Well, no, you're exactly right. They had a movie that was just 20 minutes long. They had to just...
pad it out.
Yeah, exactly. They had to sprinkle it with these massive sections of just walking, just driving. The random mini-mart scene, it was just... Maybe they had a completely different movie in mind at first, and it just got...
It's definitely... it's something all right.
Yeah. Would you recommend it?
I can't... I mean, it depends. It's like it depends on like as like an artifact of cinema. It's more the choices the film doesn't make that are most interesting. Yeah. Like if this to make this like a genuine B movie rather than a bad movie, I think it would actually have to have much more exciting action and
there's no.
It's got like some quite cool elements to it. It's got genuinely like like cool animatronic like robots. It's got a killer bike. It's got fast. It's got like all the ingredients for a good B movie.
Go over that because don't forget the animatronic skeleton was just stop motion. Yes. Yeah, and the killer bike it's just a bike. It doesn't actually do anything. I mean, it just looks awesome.
My theory.
Don't get people's hopes up.
My theory is that maybe they blew all the budget on
the bike and the skeleton.
On the stop motion robot animation.
And on Willard. He's cool.
And on Willard.
Cool. Well, I feel like this movie would be great if you're somebody who watches that kind of thing and is into cult movies and bad movies, I guess in that area. I'd say definitely watch it because you'll understand the things that are missing from it. You'll understand why certain choices might have been made, and it's hard to.
There's not much to commend this film besides the fact that it's, as I say, like a bit of an artifact, a bit of a weird thing. You can't just enjoy it as like a B movie. It's hasn't really got very much to say for itself. It doesn't really have interesting characters or like the dialogue. Like some of the dialogue is entertaining, but just because it's so eye-wateringly bizarre or bad.
Yeah, most people are not going to get through the first 30 minutes. If I'm honest, most people, because
I don't know how we got through the first.
Well, no, it's because we do watch things like this. We know. Not necessarily, well, we do know what to expect, this was definitely that kind of movie, but it's so hard to get through the first 10 minutes alone, because you're just watching him live his life. And
living his life like it's golden.
It's quite awkward, isn't it? So, R.O.T.O.R. It's a brilliant waste of time. No, I mean, I'm trying to find something that, just watch it for this. Oh, just watch it for that. There's genuinely nothing.
The only thing I like to think is this obviously comes in the wake of Terminator.
Yeah.
But Terminator 2 introduced the traffic cop, the T-1000? Which one? No, that's T-100.
What?
Cut this. We'll cut it. Cut it out. But yeah, I do kind of like to think that maybe James Cameron, in the interim between Terminator 1 and Terminator 2, saw R.O.T.O.R.
Yeah, he watched
and
it.
got the idea for like the traffic cop on a motorbike.
How can I make this movie, but
entertainingly, with engaging characters and dynamic action.
Yeah.
And cutting it more.
Cullen Blaine.
Cutting on the punch,
You did a good job. You tried your best.
And as I say, this seems to have been like his only live action project. I just want to touch back on this again. So we did a bit of digging into the director, Cullen Blaine, and basically his background, as far as I can tell, seems to be in animation. First of all, like R.O.T.O.R. seems to be like his only live action film. He's done like storyboard and directing work on a ton of like classic animated shows, like The Simpsons. He did like the first season, a couple of episodes for the first season of The Simpsons, storyboards, Animaniacs, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Real Ghostbusters, and Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. Sometimes like some of the odd filmmaking choices in this film do make a bit more sense if you're looking at it from an animator's perspective. Like everything in this film is very staid. Like you hold the frame for quite a long time. In animation, you don't really tend to like cut frames as often, do you? Or like make cuts as rapidly.
What did he do? Yeah, I mean a lot of that stuff. Yeah, it would be longer,
Again, like not very dynamic. I mean, obviously, like in the case of animation, then you can kind of the characters provide the dynamism, and like the animation of the characters. But you might like hold, After this, he went back to doing a lot of like animation stuff. He did.
That's fair enough.
I mean, went back to his bread and butter, I guess you could say.
Yeah, the stick with what you know, and that obviously worked for him because they're also, they're pretty good stuff, Watch it.
Watch it or don't watch it.
Watch it or don't watch it. Yeah, they probably don't want to watch it.
You may not feel
anymore.
that urge, like you need to watch it that urgently.
No. But this is the whole point of this entire exploit, which is to waste time and get through the days. And that was an hour and a half of doing exactly that, and we have succeeded.
We have succeeded. I'm sure we're going to be cutting a lot out. So thank you for sticking with us all this time. If you like what you're listening to, please share it with somebody.
So next time we'll be wasting our time with a game called The Council that was on offer, and it's just basically another level of detective gaming.
Yes.
But we'll get to that. It's so worth it. I can't
awesome.
Can't wait to share it with everybody.
So take care of yourselves, wash your hands, and we'll be right back with another episode very